Anglo-Japanese Foundation. I'm sorry we kept you downstairs for rather longer than we intended to. I usually very efficient Alice is on holiday this week. So we sort of came up here and we thought, oh, nobody's turned up, that's a bit disappointing. But there you all were downstairs. So I just need to do the housekeeping announcements before we start. They are, if the fire alarm goes off, and it has done a bit recently because it's been changed, you have to go down the stairs, not use the lift, and then we should congregate on the park side of the street outside the front door. And the second thing is, please don't leave any valuables in our cloakrooms because nobody is monitoring them. So if you've got a laptop in a bag, it's much better to go down and get it now and keep it with you. Right, well, at least because you were kept downstairs, you had a good chance to see Yamada-san's exhibition at some length. So I hope you made the most of that. And he's going to be talking about it this evening together with Mark Rappolt. Yamada-san completed an MFA at the School of Art Institute of Chicago and at Goldsmiths with distinction. And he's had various exhibitions internationally. Obviously, well, there's some mentioned here, Victorian Albert Museum, London, Munich, Tokyo, of course, and the one you can see downstairs. And Mark Rappolt, I'll just very briefly introduce us. He's the editor-in-chief of ArtReview and also of ArtReview Asia. And with that, I assume you guys know what you're going to do, so I'll leave it to you to do it.
Sure, I hope so. I thought we might start with, actually it's kind of this old-fashioned school thing of like, you've seen the essay or the conclusion and this is some of the working out on the screen up here. So maybe you want to start with explaining, this is kind of thought map in a way, right?
Yeah, so it's quite, in a way, like this is a very abstract and quite personal, and it may not make any sense, but I just want to share some thoughts. And I guess, yeah, one of the things I've been thinking about, perhaps because I am, born in Japan, I grew up in Japan, but I also lived in New Zealand for a long time. I lived in America, I lived in here, but there is I don't know, in a way, like a lot of the things that is accepted in Japan, for example, is not accepted, or there's something very particular in Japan that doesn't quite transcend to other places. So maybe there's something underneath that's always been interest of mine to kind of look for something universal, or look for something particular. So I always never wanted to become be called a Japanese artist, for example. Or like an art, I just want to be an artist.
Says that.
Does it say, what does it say?
Japanese artist Kentaro Yamada.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, what's the point? Well, there is kind of, what's obviously the point? But, and I guess also, I've been thinking, because I'm trapped in my body, being a person that I can only see the way I can see the world. There's I'm kind of will to want to see more things objectively, and I don't know if I'm explaining it really well, but I'm kind of perhaps I think this is quite common. So I've been thinking about what's common in the way to understand the world, whether it's Eastern or West, and mechanics or kind of ways to understand the world. I don't know, I'm speaking very
I think you talked about the subjective position, and I think one of the things you do in pretty much all the works in the show is to take something that's naturally immaterial and materialize it. So you take a sense and make it into an object, as well as a scent. You take breath and make that into this light show. You take time and measure it on the clocks. And you take time and measure it in other ways, through geology, through the contrast of the natural and the artificial. So I wonder if that's somehow at the root of your work, that you're trying to make all these things that exist in the world as immaterial substances material. And that's also similar to the way you try to materialize thought or thinking processes through the work.
Yeah. possibly. I think it's like a framework because it's so like empty or like so like it's like you're middle of the ocean
Yeah.
and you're drowning, so you need to like find some weed and fish to hold on to.
Yeah. But it's also slightly perverse.
Yeah.
So you take precisely the things that you shouldn't be able to materialize and materialize them.
Yeah, but then I think you can kind of speak about what is not able to speak about.
Yeah. That's why it's not an essay. But also I guess you're taking things from, you talked about how you've travelled a lot and been exposed to different cultures, and in some ways your work is the product of all these different places you've been to and travelled, and that's very noticeable, particularly in the installation, where there's references to so many different things. So you have the sort of natural materials from the whale and from geology, and then the unnatural things that you've constructed. And there's definitely a conversation between what's found and what's constructed going on in that installation. And I think it's interesting that you were talking about being Japanese but not wanting to be Japanese.
Yeah.
And the way you're maybe attempting to construct an idea of the self. I'm sounding like a psychiatrist now. But do you think in some ways the work is a way of working out the sense of self?
For sure, yeah. And I think one of the way of like this idea of abstraction.
Yeah.
So it's actually by being further from particularity, maybe there gives a chance to transcend your subjective understanding of things as what it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I guess and I've been actually so I was introduced to like doing meditations by Francesca, who's created the show somewhere. So I've been doing this meditation, which is a 10-day silent meditation. I've done it a few times. It's quite an interesting experience because your thinking stops in a way, and so your subjective mind stops, and you're kind of breathing object in a way, and it's sort of, I don't know, I mean, there is no answer to this thing what I'm talking about, but I think there's a sense that there are other way of understanding the world, perhaps, by kind of not understand through your subjective mind. But it is inevitable. That's the only way we kind of interact with the world.
Yeah. But why do you have this? I'm going to call it an obsession.
Yeah.
With objectifying the world and objectifying a sense of self, in a way. Because I guess most people are trying to be active subjects.
Yeah. Why? I don't know why, but I guess. But when you look at so why am I doing it? I don't know why I'm doing this. It's just.
I mean, it seems to relate to sort of the idea of looking at yourself, being able to how you see yourself.
Sure.
By making it into those types of objects. In a way, in one room you've got breath, you've got scent, you've got all these things that together might constitute an entity of some sort. And you've got bits of animals, and you've got bits of minerals.
I guess I'm trying to find a connection between the subjective myself with the universal things that's happening in the world, in space, and everything. And I don't know what that means, but I'm finding some confined space within this craziness.
Yeah.
And then trying to make some sense of it within what I can make sense of, and while acknowledging that nothing really makes sense.
So let's try to make sense of something, because that's what everyone's come for. And maybe we could just start by talking about with Neanderthal.
Oh yeah, sure.
How did that come about? So this is the perfume and the kind of beautiful rock sculpture that it's housed in.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I guess. I was interested in like Neanderthal as beings because they lived like about 450,000 years in Europe, which is like 10 times longer them living in Europe than human Homo sapiens. And Homo sapiens came to Europe about 40,000 years ago, and within 10,000 years, they were destroyed or they disappeared. So, but you know, for that 10,000 years in Europe, we lived next to each other. So it's quite an interesting thing if you think about it. There were these other beings who had their language, they were using fire, they were making art, like they were doing cave painting, things before humans arrived. And they most likely had their kind of religion, their rituals, things like that as well. So, you know, they were just, it's interesting to think about that 10,000 years is kind of like a time where we had two beings and we were not the center of the universe, like how we write our history or you know, science, we look at like, you know, or religion, that we look at like, you know, us and God and things like this. So, yeah, I felt like it's an interesting thing to kind of just, yeah, and also creating a scent or a perfume, which is perfume being it's very like marketed, you know, like it almost doesn't have a shape, you know, like it's, so to kind of create this, marry these things, I think maybe, again, like it's showing what is not here in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess you could also look at the perfume as a disguise. So something that covers your own scent with the scent of, in this case, perhaps something related to something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to think about things that doesn't, yeah. Yeah, I kind of want it to be like this thing that maybe you'll smell in a bus or something, and then, wow, that's Neanderthal. And then if you could make people think about Neanderthal as like, also like this really funny thing where it's like you're sort of aspiring to be Neanderthal.
Yeah. But how did you create the scent?
Creating a scent itself, basically I worked with a perfumer, we did a collaboration for a few projects, and we started by kind of like, it was, you know, it's not very difficult for him to create like wild animalistic scent. And that's what he sort of tried at first, and I was like, no, I want like to create something that's very contemporary, perhaps even more future than now, it's more human than human. Yes, it is and it's not, because it is in a sense that it's like, it is, basically we're talking about us.
Yeah.
So, and also all the perfume often contains things like leather, musk, debris, or actually quite a lot of like animalistic or
Yeah.
kind of like smoke and like things in the cave, you know. Very natural and quite, yeah, not, you could say it's a natural kind of things, but at the same time, yeah, it's there, but that layer is covered, but also at the same time, we are thinking about something that is more than us in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a sort of interesting oscillation between a Neanderthal as a product and something that's designed to evoke senses other than that product. I mean, there's something almost kind of that.
Yeah, yeah. And I also like, I'm selling them.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, it feels like a bad thing to do in art, you know.
To sell things.
Well, to sell like as
People love selling.
but like selling through like a commercial channel.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, but again, if you abstract this whole world or whole ways of working in society, I mean, I don't know why not? Like, this is like how we operate, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that's okay, like to.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because, I mean, it's a good way to talk about the mask, the two masks.
Sure.
With the coins.
Yeah.
And that's about the material and social values of copper to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
And maybe you can explain.
Yeah.
how that
I
works.
guess the copper. I mean, I've been using copper in different forms, but it's not.
Press the button.
Which one? I actually should.
There's going to be like a revolving slideshow.
So this was the starting point, and it was going to go there, but I thought, no, I think we'll get there maybe after.
So this is essentially Kentaro's archive.
Yeah, this is just like all last 10, 15 years of work. So maybe it might not relate exactly to what we're talking about, but it's just to show like the progress of what happens.
But I think that's also a bit how your works affect. You know, I show you this, but you're thinking that.
Mm-hmm.
There's something of the magician about them. But copper coins.
Yeah, copper coins. I mean, it's not like I'm really interested in copper as a thing that much.
Yeah.
But it's widely used material in the world from electricity to you know, like the water pipes, copper. Like I'm using copper glaze all the time.
Yeah.
It has a blue color, so I use a lot of copper glaze in my ceramic works. And
but I guess there's a discussion within that about value.
there is, yeah.
I mean, that's relating to the commercial side of the cent as well.
Yeah.
So the value of the copper and the coins becomes more than the coin is worth, or less than the coin is worth, as currencies fluctuate.
Yeah, there is that on the actually 2p coins, now that they are not using copper, pure copper, because it costs more than 2p.
Yeah.
But the 10 yen coin that they on the other marks, they are using copper because it's still less than 10 yen.
Yeah.
But it's also quite a ridiculous thing if you think about it. They just melt the metal and they say this is not worth something.
Yeah. But I think it's also, I mean, something quite historical as well that's been going on for a long time. So, like even 3rd century China has these big crises because various emperors decide that they want to make loads of chime bells.
Yeah.
And they get the copper from the currency and then put less copper in the currency going forward, and then you have inflation and things like that happening. And I think this transfer of value is something that's sort of very interesting, particularly because those masks exist next to an installation that has this kind of museological display, and the way you've displayed the work implies certain values as much as connection.
I guess it's more that I'm kind of like this debunking the value in a way. It's like there's a salt rock and there's a salt rock.
Yeah.
And they kind of occupies the same amount of volume. And if you look at it, it probably tastes salty. So there are 2 salt rocks downstairs. One is a Himalayan rock salt where you can buy, that's like a spirituality shop.
Yeah.
And the other one is a concrete replica which has an added salt. So it's kind of, if you think about it, it's quite a strange thing. It looks kind of similar. You get a similar feelings from it, but then it has completely different history to it.
Yeah. But I guess the question then would be, are you arguing for the equivalence or sameness, or the difference? Because I think the interesting thing with the work is it's not quite clear which.
Is this same? It's the same. I'm not saying they're the same, but I think I'm interested in being playful within that confined space that I can kind of do.
Yeah. Because I think that argument about sameness and equivalence also takes place in the work that's attributed to Felix González Torres.
Yeah.
With the 2 clocks. And if everyone saw that, just sort of in the corridor between the 2 rooms. But maybe you could explain that.
Sure, yeah. So there are 2 clocks downstairs as you walk out, sort of like the door, above the doors. So there are 2 clocks. So there's this work by artist Felix González Torres, who made this beautiful work called Perfect Lovers, which is quite well known. It's 2 clocks that's basically shown together on the wall, and they start to go out of sync after some time. And I mean, there are many connotations to this, but his life, I guess he was a kind of gay man who died of AIDS and things like this. So there's many interpretations to this, but I mean, it's very poetic, it's beautiful, and I always liked it. But the work that I've kind of created as a kind of replica, it's another kind of copy of a copy, is 2 clocks that doesn't go out of sync because they are controlled by radio waves. And you can buy like a clock which is controlled by radio wave, which always knows what time it is. So there's the second
Second-hand.
Yeah, is always in sync. So yeah, I guess it's again a kind of what does it do? Like when you show something work like that,
Yeah.
knowing that there's original.
So I guess it's the relationship between another artwork,
Yeah.
but also a statement about time that relates to kind of, I guess, some of your interest in the natural world, maybe. And
Yeah.
because there are various different measurements of time within the show. There's the geological time,
Sure.
the atomic time,
Yeah.
and the historical time, particularly with the tsunami
Yeah.
works. And it seems that time is one of these things you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out by showing it in different ways.
Yeah. Maybe. Like I guess when you said about time before, like I never thought I'm interested in time as such, but it's one of this kind of framework we have. So it's one of the weed or fish in the sea that you can kind of maybe grab onto, but it's always relative to where you are.
Yeah.
So you don't know how small or big or tiny because you can always divide time. Right? So yeah, I mean, I guess it's always I'm feeling like I'm always coming to like, well, but I still don't know. But in doing the effort to understanding, maybe there's something in it.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because when you make an exhibition like that, there's some implication that you do know. I mean, as a viewer, people don't necessarily walk into a show saying, hey, I want to be asked lots of questions that are not answered.
Yeah, right.
And you know, particularly with the clubs, it is a sort of statement about how time works.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting balance, this, I guess the persona you're projecting,
Yeah.
of unknowing,
Sure.
and the fact that there's these concrete objects that suggest a kind of knowledge, or
Exactly,
a way
yeah.
of thinking about them.
Yeah. Yeah, so in a way, like I'm using the mechanism of Western art
Yeah.
to kind of talk about maybe something that's not quite customary to those words, maybe.
But then do you think about it as Western and Eastern? And then what's the-
Maybe the market is.
Yeah? The art itself not? Or-
I guess.
We're circling back to your Japaneseness now.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, but I was thinking about. Yeah, I mean, my mother was teaching Japanese tea ceremony. She was a professor of tea ceremony, and I was thinking like they talk about this thing of way of something, their way of writing calligraphy, way of tea or something, you know. So I don't know. To me, that's quite it's like someone's life is and someone's what they do is in line with the trajectory of a bigger thing, you know.
Like a culture.
Culture, time, materials, history, culture, you know, all kinds of things. So I guess in a way I'm still, yeah, I guess going back to like, well, I don't want to be called Japanese artist. Yeah, well, but it is still something in it.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to find a way to not be that.
But do you know what it is that's in your work?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in a way that it's like, well, you said, you know, it doesn't answer questions. It's asking all the questions. It sounds like some kind of like, you know, Zen question.
Yeah. Is it?
Could be. I don't know. You could say that the whole thing is like a, you know, like for the Zen questions is like this kind of like a trick, or is it like this? Is it like this? Then you just left thinking about it, and that
Yeah.
has an effect of it. So maybe it's a bit like that.
And the breathing work? I think maybe just describe how it's
Yeah. How it works, or
but what it's kind of
what it does. Yeah, it represents a breathing pattern of someone who's close to death. So basically, those lights breathing, and so when someone's maybe if you had seen someone who's close to like in a deathbed or something, they often have this kind of patterns where like they sort of breathe very heavily for like few cycles, and then they stop, and then you don't know where the next one is coming. So there's sort of a bit of a suspense kind of thing where maybe that's it. But then this about 12 years ago when my mother died, like I saw this, and it was, I don't know, it was kind of, it was a very unique experience, and I guess again, like I didn't see the whole experience as something. When you abstract the experience from personal experience, it could be something quite beautiful as well. And I thought I just put it out there in the world.
Yeah. But is it to you some way of recovering what could be a quite traumatic experience?
Possibly, a little bit, but at the same time not. Like I'm not in a way, like because I'm sort of I'm talking about it like a thing, you know. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're abstracting it.
Yeah.
And then rematerializing it in some other form.
Sure. So maybe it is maybe ways to make sense of something.
Yeah.
But it's
I'm suggesting it's a form of therapy.
maybe.
And then what does it mean to put a work like that with photographs?
Yeah, so it just came to me, it was in 2011 when the tsunami happened, and I was kind of making this work, and there was all this, yeah, that's right, yeah. So when I was watching those, when the earthquake happened and tsunami was hitting close to Japan, there was this aerial shot from news helicopters, these waves are coming. But you couldn't help to think there was something quite beautiful, even though it was like going to kill a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
So again, like when you abstract something that's very quite emotional and personal, like you know, I mean, I guess there is, yeah. I was thinking about different. There are traditions in East and West,
Yeah.
to abstract. Of abstraction in order to understand like nature or things like this. You know. So,
Because I guess it's just interesting, you know, on the one hand we might call that the death room,
yeah,
and the home of your morbid obsessions.
yeah,
And on the other hand, it feels quite beautiful and poetic, and recovers what might otherwise be a slightly depressing experience.
sure.
And does that relate to your experiences in relation to kind of Zen or religion, or?
Maybe. I guess you could say that.
Well, I guess the person who put Japanese artist would want to say that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that would be kind of interesting if you could like this idea of you know, the distancing. You know, there's like there are some things like could you say sublime is way? Yeah. So you could talk about like there's very particular Japanese like kind of like beauty, like yugen and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's like a German kind of versions which is like Gelesen height. So I mean that's kind of I have that would be like I would feel so much better if they connect somehow.
Right. So you're trying, to make those connections. I guess it's interesting with, you know, waves in Japanese art.
Exactly. Yeah. It means one thing.
Yeah. Well, but maybe after 2011, it also means another thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. Somehow, looking at those works, it's sort of a kind of new era, you know, about what we talk about when we talk about waves in relation to Japan.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's part of that going on, a sort of reinvention of the language associated with Japanese culture.
That would be good.
It would be beneficial to your non-Japanese Japaneseness.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
I mean, because, both Western and Asian art history are present in this show.
Yeah.
As strands that feed it, but also that you're wanting to disrupt in some ways.
Yeah, I think it's like connect or have just kind of flatten out a bit and just mix it.
Yeah. But I think this is interesting because increasingly we live in a world where cultural specificity is a big issue.
Yeah.
And various claims to authenticity, indigeneity are becoming more of an issue. Mm-hmm. At the same time as in another world, the world is becoming more globalized and mixed.
Sure.
And it seems often that the cultural specificity argument is the loudest. Mm-hmm. And the idea of a kind of mixed culture that's not to do with economics and globalism, but to do with the pragmatic things that happen in the world.
How do you feel about that as a...
I feel very strongly about it. As a sort of German Sri Lankan Malaysian.
Yeah. But I'm sort of... this is also... we sort of spoke about it briefly, but I'm kind of interested, like, how do you How does that work for you, kind of?
Well, as a child it was very difficult growing up here, but now I think it's very empowering.
Yeah.
Because you can be a Japanese artist,
Yeah.
but you cannot be a Japanese artist
Sure.
as well. And you can step in and out of these different cultures,
Yeah.
and you can put what you like from Felix Gonzalez Torres, or Hokusai, or wherever. And there's a language that works that's based on that. And I think somehow it's important that artists and writers argue for this in a context we're talking about of very, very specific cultures. And that's why it's also wonderful that you're doing it here.
Yeah. This is why I showed that work here, because people see that from that perspective. Oh, it's Daiwa Tsunami.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean, it's kind of absurd, but it's kind of, you know.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm kind of using cliche in a way to talk about something different, I think.
Yeah. And how easy do you find it to escape these, I guess, pigeonholes or definitions?
I would say I find it easier than other people.
And that's because of your experience traveling? And
Maybe.
Living in different places?
Maybe.
Because it's always interesting talking to you about Japan, because you have this, not ambivalent, but sometimes very Japanese, sometimes not Japanese.
Yeah.
I think that reflects in the work of it.
I don't, yeah, but at the same time I think, so there's this other project we're doing we're making a documentary about whaling in Japan. So it's a very topical thing this week, because the whaling resumed, the commercial whaling resumed in Japan. But I'm working with a friend who's helping me from here too, and another person who's also our tutor at uni, art school tutor. So the three of us are making a documentary about, basically about this village in Japan, which were boomed with a whaling, and then it was in Tohoku, so it was completely wiped away by tsunami, and they're kind of recovering at the same time they're resuming whaling slowly. So when it's about something like this kind of topic, I think definitely my standpoint is not, I mean, I think it's quite interesting because it's sort of something I can kind of shift in a way. Like I can understand the others, but then I can understand the Japanese. So
Yeah.
It's not like, yeah, but at the same time, my friends would tell me I'm very Japanese.
And maybe you can talk a little bit more about the different media you use. You just introduced the fact that you're making videos.
Sure.
And if you look downstairs, one of the sort of things in the show is the way you use incredibly different media in each kind of these rooms. So does it tend to be that the subject finds a medium, or?
I guess it was just, maybe it was just that I was taught that at school that it was not like about it should be about ideas, not about what material you should use or something. But I think I am liking ceramics these days. I think there was a photo of me. My father does Japanese pottery, so I kind of grew up with ceramics. So, but I never wanted to do it because you don't want to do what your father is good at. So recently I started doing it more and more. I guess again, like I'm interested in the materiality of the ceramics as a connection to like the earth, the rocks, the basically it's part of the space and cosmic. So that being able to position your things you made, and you don't know whether you made it or some other bigger thing made it. It's quite a nice material.
Yeah. And before we get back to you, what does your father think of your work?
He doesn't care.
I'm sure that's not true.
I don't know. No, he says he's more into crafts. So being a craftsman is like like in Japan, like you have to be like 15 generation or something in order to be considered like you're okay.
Yeah.
And he's
That
not.
could be you.
No, but I'm not. Like so that he's saying like, oh, you should make something that is not like craft.
He was saying.
Yeah.
Polite way of saying you went up to it.
I don't know. Because it's like, because also he sort of kept saying like, oh, it's like a big trap. So if you could waste all your life trying to get the right black color.
Hasn't done that.
Not really, but
and so what's prompted your re-interest in ceramics?
I guess I just realized how much I knew without, just because I grew up with it, I just realized like it was quite natural for me to try something, and I realized, oh, actually I know a lot because, growing up you go to all these ceramic towns and things, and every day when you're eating, we talk about glaze something, and I didn't even know that was not a thing.
Yeah. But it somehow can be quite a different process from, I guess, a lot of the works that are downstairs, which are more, I guess, an expression of an idea without necessarily handcraft.
Yes. Yeah. I guess what interests me about this kind of crafting practice is this idea of, there's like the unknown craftsman.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this unknownness of that fact that your hand, the making becomes kind of part of the longer history of just things.
Yeah. But I like this idea that somehow you reject your father's craft, then come back to your father's craft, that you reject a certain idea of Japaneseness and then maybe slowly come back to Japaneseness. And this kind of journey is interesting. It seems like a way of discovering your place in these bigger cultural narratives.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That would be...
But I think it also relates to the way the works are sort of do, like, they show you one thing that suggests breath.
Yeah.
They show you perfume that suggests a stone.
Yeah, maybe it's good. It's good to have different kind of, I never really thought it like that. So it's
But I think it's this interesting, because the work is so material, and so the emphasis, whatever you say about rejecting ceramics early on, the emphasis is still very much on the materiality.
Sure.
And almost the feel.
Basically, yeah. I feel like it's inevitable space, 3D space that we live in. We have a body, we have things, we just have to deal with it.
Yeah. So now we're coming to answers, not questions.
Yeah, but then the will to escape from it is by using these 3D space.
Yeah.
Is kind of maybe what it's about, maybe. And yeah, and I'm also thinking about, and also I was thinking about today, like, well, if I make something, and if people come and see things, it has to definitely do things, communicate, beyond your language, or like it has to do something that's better than things we know. It has to be worthwhile for things to be, be like that. I guess that's kind of what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And that's very, put the finger on it, because as soon as you put a finger on it, it escapes.
Yeah. And then I guess, quite shortly we'll open up the discussion so everyone else it can become group therapy. But I was wondering, you made me think, what would be the differences of this show, the show that's downstairs,
Sure.
was in Japan at the Society for Overseas Japanese People? Would there be a real difference in what you would do?
I guess I don't know how I could make it different, but
would you have different considerations in terms of audience?
I think so.
What would they be?
I think I would probably try to be more, I wouldn't say Western, maybe universal, maybe more try to emphasize that it's, at a particularity, it doesn't have to be so, they probably pick up much easier the particularity with it. So I tried to make it more, I don't know what's the word, not minimal, but it's like something that is more universal, that within, yeah, I would probably make it less culture specific in Japan.
Less culturally specific.
Mm-hmm.
But we already talked about how it's quite mixed in terms of its culture.
Yeah, but if I was to selective, I think maybe, because it for Japanese, or I think one of the things that I was, in this show I did, especially with the curator, is that I spelled out a lot more than I usually do.
Yeah.
So materials are listed. It sort of says, almost saying what it is, like what it might be. And I would say, in Japan, you can leave it a little bit more ambiguous, or like because their cultural cue or little cues are more, people are more tuned into those things, perhaps.
To a sense of materiality.
Yeah, people are like this kind of people. Well, there's a tradition of people talking about those things at least.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel you're dumbing it down for the British audience?
No, but I'm kind of. If it was something that that would be amazing. If those kind of very traditional, let's say like, I don't know. Just because I just got this, I was rereading the Unknown Craftsman.
Yeah.
They talk about seeing eye. I remember my dad always talking about the seeing eye as like a normal thing in the table, right? And it's, for me, it was quite a boring topic as a child. But now I'm thinking, well, if you could just actually lift that off and then maybe sort of make it a little bit more palatable in the Western audience, that would be an interesting topic, like a project. So maybe that's kind of, yeah.
And then before we invite everyone else in,
Sure.
why did you call it Everything Comes in Waves? I mean, there's obviously waves in it, but now I'm kind of thinking you could call it My Dad.
No, why is that? I think it has many different, like, kind of ways to read into the title.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of, Buddhistic. So it sounds very much like about the work. So it sounds about, but it's kind of true, Like, it's kind of like everything seems to come in waves. And I think, there was one time my friend was asked LSD and he said this, and I was like, oh, really? Like,
And just for clarity's sake, you're a Buddhist.
I like the idea of Buddhism, for sure.
So you are, or you aren't? This is like the Japanese thing.
Yeah.
Maybe,
but I don't know, what does it mean?
Does anyone from the audience have any questions they'd like to ask Kentaro? This gentleman.
I was wondering to what degree you're interested in specific meanings of the materials you use. Like, for instance, when you look at the clay and how you combine it with the neon and maybe the oil. I mean, you could read it as like craft versus industry, and then the oil is energy in the neon, or is it too direct or too flat, perhaps?
No, I think it's, I feel like I need to be responsible for the meaning that it may create. Because, semiotics and symbols and so forth. But at the same time, I have like really big will to want to escape from it. So it's sort of like somewhere in between, by playing around with those meanings as well as sort of trying to, hoping to break away from it. That makes sense.
Because they're very loaded, right? I mean, your materials, some of them are very loaded.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, if you do oil, there's an engine oil. I am definitely using the mechanics of it has to be local oil, like for example, it has to be a dirty oil that is used. So it has a symbolic value to it, but then I'm kind of trying to address that they were like maybe dinosaur or something,
Okay.
So in a way, coming back to this ideas of time,
Yeah, it's time, yeah, maybe, I mean, yeah.
History.
Mystery is...
Hi, yeah. I'd just like to talk a little bit about tension in your work, in particular in breath, because if you think of your dying moments on a deathbed, taking your supposedly peaceful final breaths, and compare that to the final moments of someone who's about to be subsumed by a tsunami, they're sort of diametrically opposed. So I just wonder what you think about how your work, which direction is the light being cast? Are you casting light on the violence of the end of life on the person who's still in the bed, or are you casting light on on the stillness of the terror?
I think it's both, but I think it's basically the abstraction of those things creates the opportunity to look at things in a different light, maybe. So that, I don't know, maybe it's too, what's the word, like maybe I am made to put myself in too much importance or something, because who am I to be that person who can see the world in that way? I sort of think.
Isn't that what being an artist is?
Well, that's also like quite ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. But you're still having to do it.
Yeah. But at the same time, I feel there's certain responsibility. If there's many people come and listen to my strange topic, then it has to mean something.
So this is what we're getting towards, the answers,
Yeah.
not the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, maybe, yeah.
Are there more questions?
I'd like to know how much perfume you've sold.
About 600.
Wow.
Well, maybe like 500.
I'm interested in, thank you for talking. I'm interested in, when you create artwork, is your intention to communicate with the potential future audience, or the motivation comes more to do with answering your own struggle or questions? I know it's not, one thing and not completely the other. It obviously overlaps, but I would like to know which is more important.
But I guess if there was no exhibition, it's like, if that, in a way, exhibition becomes a good excuse for the figuring out. And I don't know if there is no. I'm not the kind of artist I'm always making something every day and just playing around with it. I think it's, I tend to kind of think in a more, sort of like what's coming, But also, it's looking at what I've done in the past, I feel like the figuring out has definitely progressed to a point where I feel like I know what I'm asking is. So it's still a question, but the question becomes more kind of like, oh yeah, I know like what I'm asking. Is that okay? That I don't have an answer.
You're trying desperately to avoid us. But I guess, following on from that, how does it feel to look at this older work? Do you think, oh, I can move on so far from that? Or does it still hold the same kind of interest?
It's still the same, yeah, it's still the same, and I think, I think it's great. Like, in a way, I'm really frustrated to see the past works. And like when maybe like in art school, I was in crit or something, and no one could say what it was, but now I know, oh, that was this thing that I was asking now.
There's a two.
Two You mentioned right at the start something about the culture of Japan and the particularity of Japan. I've never been myself, I'm very interested, and I wonder whether it gives you in some way a particular mode of thinking and working when making an art that isn't accessible to Westerners.
Very, very general kind of maybe perhaps slightly racist terms. You could say that, yeah, like, I mean, you know, there's, I guess you could say that the Western method or the approach often, you know, it's very, they tend to be like black and white, I guess, like, you know, tries to say, I mean, you know, discovering, maybe that's one better, but you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, for me it's also interesting because, I mean, if we took someone we talked briefly about Okakura,
Yeah.
who constructs this portrait of Japan for all kinds of reasons, as essentially a museum of Asia. And he talks about how in Japan, the religion that they stole from India is preserved, how the calligraphy and art that they took from China is preserved, and various other things from Korea. It really constructs this argument for Japan, and it's the way it kind of preserves certain cultures without ostensibly having its own specific culture.
It doesn't rule out, I guess, like it's like if you talk about like religion and God and things in Japan, all of these gods exist, like, and they kind of, people don't know they're Buddhist, or you know, people have wedding in a Western style, they have a funeral in a Buddhist style, like, you know, like it's all quite mixed. And so definitely I do find that maybe I did find, like, at least like in art school and things, places like that, like people were looking for like quite direct, well, this means this, so, and it's not like that maybe in the East.
Yeah. But do you think that's in relation to a history that privileges calligraphy a lot more? So that a lot of art evolves from writing?
Yeah, maybe. I never really thought about that. Yeah, maybe.
I sometimes wonder about Japanese forms that they seem to me to have an ambiguity and they're not as definite as our language, and I wonder whether those pictograms themselves give maybe a flexibility in thinking, maybe you take for granted.
Yeah, exactly. I never really thought about that. Yeah, it could be. Could be.
You can see this is going, like, your very ambiguity about questions and answers is making you more and more Japanese.
You mentioned a bit about materialization.
Trying to make sense of the world as a live being, and you know, like I'm sort of thinking about, we come from like maybe we're like little bacteria that came on like a little rock and they smashed into Earth, and that doesn't, like, I don't know what that means. Like, but we're trying to make sense of ourselves in our world, but it doesn't mean anything because it's just like a little bacteria. I don't know how, it's something like this. So I'm kind of trying to put things in the right pockets to see if that makes any sense. Maybe sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
So do you think that sort of existentialism might play in your work? Oh, sorry. Do you think existentialism might play in your work as well?
Apparently so.
I think breathing would be hard not to have. I mean, I wonder, following from that, if you suddenly started producing work that only produced answers and not questions, would that really be weird?
No, but maybe the perfume work is interesting because it's sort of like, it's quite specific. It's actually, you know, like it's Zen. It's of this world, like it's not, but then it's sort of yeah, I guess it's very clear like what it is asking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it still has a connection to more bigger things. But yeah, do you think I should make things that answers things more?
No, just if by chance an answer materialized as much as a question, would that feel wrong? Like you failed somehow?
So yeah, are you asking your Western side to ask this question?
Both of my sides are asking this question. You assume there's a conflict, which is interesting.
Yeah, that would be kind of boring, no? But if there was like, oh, I'm figured out.
Perhaps we make up this conflict. to keep us interested.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Like it's. Yeah. But at the same time, I think if you create an installation artwork, and I think it's still at the same time form has to be. Form does something. It's you can't deny that. Even though you say, it's just things. It still does. You are being in a world and experience things in a certain way. You have a body. So, some works has more impact. And I think that's something to definitely take in consideration.
But in a way, every time you assemble these forms, every bit of that assembly is a decision that you made.
Yes.
As much as you decided to do that, you decided not to do something else.
Sure. For sure.
There's a certain degree of answer.
There is a little bit of answer. I mean, maybe there is certain, of decision making. The answers, the subjective mind interfering with the world. Well, we have to, right?
Yeah.
But but I don't have to make it all about. Oh, I know everything.
Mm-hmm. Are there more questions about what Kentaro knows? What's your favourite work in the show? The building's burning, you can save one.
Well, most of the ceramic works will survive. Will probably be better glazed. But this is the thing, right? Like I kind of like artwork or the art world, or we spend so much time preserving, on conservation.
Yeah.
But everything will just be gone anyway.
Or just restored to the point where it's just been remade.
Yeah, but what I mean is we all die and everything will go and it will just be so. What this is a distance thing again,
Yeah.
So I kind of like when maybe the things burn and it becomes a different form.
You preserve that new form. You come back to the ashes.
I was thinking the other day, maybe it's really reversed, but when I die, can I become a blaze of my own?
Can you? Who'd be using this phrase?
Either someone else has to use it to put it
Yeah,
on.
but would you insist that it was a particularly skilled person, or would you give it to a kindergarten?
Yeah, that's too many decisions.
At some point, everyone has to decide.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll yeah.
You've got to think these things through.
Right, yeah. Maybe this is my weakness.
Well, I think we're nearing the end, unless there's one final question.
Yeah.
Seems a bit disappointing to end on your weakness.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
You were projecting earlier a diagram, and I got here a bit late. I don't know whether you talked about it already or not. So one question is whether you can explain a little bit about this specific diagram, and the main question is whether you work diagrammatically, so to speak. Do you think? Do you start with diagrams? Do you write down your ideas as diagrams as opposed to sketches, or was this one off especially for this talk?
No, it's not special for. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's not special for this show. It's kind of like reoccurring diagram. And in a way, I guess you could say that the work and installation is like a diagram. You're trying to figure things out, like a map. And this one was, this was kind of what I was showing. This is more about sort of like explained to Mark, but this is more like a diagram. So it's like a subjective being, and there's things that can be objective. And there is sort of like a big life, which is a life of like force of like everything, and there's a life of a person. And they sort of intersect, and I'm trying to make sense in between. This is probably just like really wacky. I'm sort of thinking, well, so while I'm stuck in this space, maybe all I can do is like, you know, like we can enjoy the, you know, you can maybe write music and write poetry. But also we create value out of this world. This is probably like 2-hour conversation, but.
But I think one of the things I really love about these kind of diagrams that you do is that it looks like it explains something, but it might equally be that you cross the entire thing out.
Yeah. Possibly.
Can I ask about the diagram? Hi. Just again on the diagram.
Yeah.
It may be short, maybe 2 hours, but you choose.
Sure.
So subjectivity becomes objectivity?
No, there's subjectivity. It's going this way. There's an arrow here.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering about the crisscross.
Yeah, we have like subjective view, subjective world. You know, we have our life. We think in a subjective way, and there's like objective kind of point of view. There's bigger world things happening. There's cosmic things happening. But we have to make sense. We have to make use of this, you know, cross section. And what do we do in it? We try to make sense of it. We create values, you know, all kinds of things. But this is like inevitable triangle we're sort of stuck in. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It helps to read the diagram.
And what is the role of poetry and music? Does it bridge the two?
This is like really like, yeah, this is just like very, like, you know, like it's a very personal, very like sketchy thing. So like it's not like everything can be like you know, articulated that well. But I feel like, well, while we're stuck in this world, like we could just find, you know, beautiful things, or arrange things in a way that's interesting, or you know, maybe that's all we can do.
I mean, it's fair to say that you do keep a lot of notes and things as well. I'm staring at you.
Oh, yeah, yes and no. Yeah, maybe, yeah, sometimes.
No, when we talked earlier, you know, you said like, flick, flick, flick. The last time we met, you said, and then you read it out.
Yes, that was
creepy.
No, that's because I never do it because Padre Francesco, who's a curator, said you should do that.
Take notes.
It was an advice. Yeah.
Blame it on me.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, thank you all for coming. I mean, you sure people that Kentaro
Yeah, please
afterwards for full explanations. But thank you, Kentaro.
Great. Yeah, thank you both very much indeed. So I think we are going to have a drink downstairs. I'm hoping so. So we might not have 2 hours, but you can continue the conversation for a little while about this diagram. Just before I wrap things up, can I mention an upcoming event which we've only just put on our website? You know the British Museum is doing this big manga exhibition at the moment. I think it's the largest ever manga exhibition, certainly outside Japan. So we're going to do an event linked to that. Nicole Roumanière, who is the curator of that exhibition, is one of the 3 speakers. And along with her will be Okuma-san, who is the... if you remember the poster, there's a picture of a character who is called Asiepa from a manga called Golden Kamuy, which is about the Ainu in Hokkaido. So the editor of that manga series is coming here to speak, along with an Ainu artist called Toru Kaizawa. So they'll be talking not only about the exhibition as a whole, but also about this particular manga series and how it reflects Ainu culture and has brought Ainu culture more into the mainstream. So that event will be, unusually for us, it'll be on a Saturday, the 20th of July, and it's at 5 p.m. Again, that's unusual because we're usually at 6. So do please put that in your diaries if you're interested in it. When we go down and have a drink, you obviously can have another look at the exhibition. Probably many of you missed the clocks. Did you see the clocks? You have to look quite carefully for the clocks. So they're sort of up above you. Well, if you look very carefully, you'll find they're